Well, first of all, thanks for joining us today. How was the Indy 500?
Oh, fantastic. Boy, what an experience. We came within 2.5 gallons of gas of winning. We were actually leading on lap 197. But like Danica and other cars, we were short of gas.
Oh, well, you own a car then?
Well, no, my friend does. It's the Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan race team. That's who our hosts were.
Oh, okay. Who was the driver?
Baguette, Bertrand Baguette.
All right. I went to the time trials back in 67.
Oh, boy,
and,
long ago.
Well, that was when Parnelli Jones had that turbo car
That's right.
Didn't hardly make a noise.
Yep, the orange one, I know. It was like the big vacuum cleaner.
It just went, psst, down the track.
It wasn't easy, but for that 25-cent part, unbelievable.
Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most people know you from your role as Jeff Stone on the Donna Reed Show.
Oh, I think that's fair to say.
That wasn't a big step out there, although people who listen to my show should be familiar with my dad.
Yes. Well, it's really funny. When you've been around for a long time, people sort of pick the memories they want to hold on to. For some people, it's a song like My Dad, or for others, it's She Can't Find Your Keys, or maybe it's the early years of the Donna Reed Show, sometimes the later years where I was, doing the teen idol stuff. And then for other people, it's things as peculiar as the Gidget movie that I did called Gidget Grows Up, or as it is now, it's the work I'm doing trying to protect the young performers in the entertainment business. I've been doing that for 22 years now.
Yeah. Well, now, before we get to the Donna Reed days and what you're doing now, let's start at the beginning. Where are you from originally?
Well, I was born here in Southern California, a town called Glendale.
Oh, okay.
And but it was immediately after World War II, and there was a big depression going on because all of the war industries were shutting down, and we moved back to Iowa, a little town called Odo, outside of Sioux City, Cherokee County, in fact. And we were there until 1951 when the family moved back to, when Lockheed called my both grandfathers, my dad and my mom, back to work.
So you really didn't have far to go at all then to get started in show business. How did you get started?
Well, I here's the simple answer. My mom was bigger than me.
Okay.
Well, we were sort of typical of a blue-collar family with two attractive kids who could sing and who could dance. We were taking a lot of lessons when I mean my sister Pam and I. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty good. We're better than pretty good, as making appearances around Southern California, every place from the Wadsworth Theater over at the VA Center to a local television show called Rocket to Stardom. And then one day, my dance teacher, Sally Sargent, heard about an open audition at Disney's, and went over there cold on a weekend with 5,000 other people, and after an audition, I was hired to be one of the original Mouseketeers.
Wow. Well, how long were you on that show?
Only about 7 weeks. Then they fired me for conduct unbecoming a mouse.
Oh, okay. Well, I had read where your autobiography was subtitles, Confessions of the First Ex-Mouseketeer.
and it's true. Look, I had no concept of the discipline required to be a professional kid in this industry. But I quickly learned that lesson. By the time I was discharged from Disney, I had an agent, which by law you have to have, and her solution to the loss of employment was to get me out on other interviews. And what I discovered was that I liked the auditioning process, and I was good at it because I was a good reader and had a solid memory. And after losing that first job, I wanted more.
You also went on to appear in the movie Houseboat.
Well, that's right. Of course, that was after a sort of a very compressed career path. Started with national commercials and then did things like Ford Theater, then Playhouse 90, and the jobs got bigger, and then I was selected to play Cary Grant's oldest son, David, in Houseboat. And Houseboat led directly because of the good reports that were given to the audition and finally employment at Screen Gems for the Donna Reed Show.
Okay. Well, I got some of this information from Wikipedia, so, however accurate it is, I guess it's kind of up in the air, but the years between the Mouseketeer days and Houseboat were left out.
I think, in the interest of time, but as I have written, the truth is for a young performer, there is a very compressed career path because there aren't that many casting agents here in Hollywood. Well, especially at that time, we're talking mid-50s. And they talk to each other, and when you do a good job and have a favorable report card, if you will, from your coworkers, that news gets around town in a hurry.
Right.
And so as the jobs get bigger and you demonstrate that you can do what you're asked, pretty soon you build a reputation. And this process can be as short as a year, which is pretty much what happened with me.
Well, what was it like working with Cary Grant, Sophia Loren?
Oh, it was one of the great experiences of my life. We're talking an A movie, 7 months of my life when I was 12 years old. It was fantastic. Cary Grant befriended me. I called him Mr. G up till his death. It was really an extraordinary experience. And the outcome of the movie, which was well received and made a lot of money, was Screen Gems and Columbia Pictures, which owned Screen Gems, didn't think they were taking a chance when they cast me as Jeff Stone. Now, just like my friend Tony Dow says, you get a job on a family show in that era, well, poof, there goes your life. Because the next 8 years, from age 12 to 20, were dictated by the show.
Yeah. You mentioned that movie helping you get the Donna Reed show gig. Was the TV show already in the works?
Well, actually, it was a long run-up. Back in the day, you had to, first they had to have scripts that had to be submitted, and our creator was a guy named William Roberts, who had some credentials. For example, he wrote a little movie called Magnificent Seven. So we were on the fast track because Tony Owen, which was Donna Reed's husband then, was a producer of note and a man of some stature in town. And when Screen Gems picked up the project, we were on a fast track for the pilot season. The first show was wonderful. And from that, we got an order from ABC to do the first season, and it helped that our sponsor was Campbell Soup. Campbell Soup was they only had one other show on the air. It was called Lassie. Mm-hmm. And in those days, the advertiser actually dictated the kinds of shows that they wanted to sponsor. It's not like today where advertisers actually compete for a time slot.
Yeah.
So our show was designed to bring the family together and in a very positive and upbeat setting, and frankly, sell soup.
When you hear these stories about cast members either not getting along or maybe getting along a little too well, how was it like on the set of Donna Reed?
Oh, you have to understand that when we started in 1958, there were already horror stories about family shows where the cast really didn't mesh on a personal level. Mm-hmm. And Donna Reed and Carl Betts, the man who played my father, Dr. Alexander Stone, made a commitment even then to not only be friends with me and Shelley Fabre, but to sustain that friendship come what may. And even after the show, it's hard to imagine, but even after the Donna Reed show was over 8 years later, we would go to lunch at least once a month. Wherever we were in the country, we would arrange to all get together because we grew very, very close. And it was a challenge because we were so identified as a family group that we each had to pay attention to our real flesh and blood families at the same time, which for Donna was a very difficult process because she had 4 children of her own. But Shelley and I, learning from Donna and Carl, were able to not only nourish that friendship with Donna's real children, but is very important to us to this day.
Was Donna pretty much like her screen image?
Well, yes, but you have to understand, Donna was playing, the part of a Midwestern housewife married to a doctor.
Right.
But the Donna Reed that the industry knew, and I can tell you is a fact, is that she was an Academy Award-winning actress who grew up in the MGM star system. Mm-hmm. She was this unique blend of a Iowa farm girl and a star.
Your TV dad, Carl Betts, when I was a kid, I always thought he looked like Superman in the comic books.
That's fun. Carl, he was a very interesting man because he was a classically trained Shakespearean actor who had won collegiate awards like the Carnegie Award when he graduated college. In fact, he shared it with the novelist Robert Ludlum. So he was an extraordinary artist. He wasn't the kind of guy you'd go fishing and hunting with, or even go to a football game. But he could paint and recite poetry, and he was deeply sensitive to the atmosphere that we were all in. He was a good man.
Well, and of course, you mentioned Shelley Fabares. She was a heartthrob too.
Oh, absolutely, she was, and why not? She was a beautiful teenager, a beautiful young woman, and a beautiful woman who is mature.
Well, of course, I remember seeing her in the TV show Coach too. What is she doing now?
Well, Shelley is pretty much retired. I don't know if you know that nearly 14 years ago, Shelley had to have a liver transplant, and Coach was really the end of her active days as an actress. It is so grueling. The schedule when you're on a series is so tough. It's like being in jail. You're up early, you don't get to eat right, there's a lot of pressure, and frankly, Shelley doesn't need the stress. But it's important that we remember all the other shows she was on. Brian Keith for 5 years.
Right.
She starred with Elvis Presley in 3 movies.
Yeah.
She was on One Day at a Time, playing Bonnie Franklin's boss.
Oh, yeah.
Even in a 2-year series called Fernwood Tonight, where she was the handicapped former tennis player. She's had a wonderful career.
Yeah. Well, we've mentioned briefly your singing career. You had a few other hits than My Dad. You mentioned She Can't Find Her Keys. I've got to dig up some of your other ones here because My Dad's the only one.
Hey, there's Lollipops and Roses, which I sold more than Jack Jones. And, of course, we did a Bye Bye Birdie cast album and a couple of well-received albums called Teenage Triangle. That was with Shelley Fabares, James Darren, and me. Mm-hmm. And, even though it was brief, it was a lot of fun. It got me out on the road, and I got to meet and make friends with many professional musicians and artists.
We even recorded for Motown, too.
That's correct. After the show was finished, it was an honor to be asked to be the first white artist on Motown. But many of the Motown acts I had performed with over the years, especially on the Dick Clark Caravan of Stars. And it was a brief but very stimulating experience. Perhaps we were a little too early to have the kind of success I might have wanted. But nonetheless, the songs were fun, and they hold up even now.
Yeah. Well, now, you mentioned what Tony Dow said about, poof, there goes your life, if you're on a family show. After Donna Reed ended, how hard was it to move on to other roles?
Well, it was very difficult. In fact, the short version, so you understand, is that in the year after the Donna Reed show, I worked 16 weeks, then 8 weeks, then 4 weeks, and then not at all. Mm. Because the fact was, even a hard-headed guy like me had to finally admit that Hollywood was done with me. The image that I had portrayed successfully for so many years, the all-American boy, well-groomed, well-mannered, upbeat and positive, just didn't fit in the Hollywood of the late 60s.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was a wrenching time in my life. I made a lot of bad personal decisions, whether it was drugs or alcohol or bad associations. Even a bad marriage got thrown in there. And it took Mickey Rooney coming to my house and saying to me, and now mind you, this was uninvited. He just showed up. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, Paul, you've got to get out of town, get your education, and find something else to do because they're not going to let you work.
Well, but you didn't go crazy like a lot of these kids do when they get too old for the roles they've been used to getting. I mean, you mentioned the drugs and alcohol, but...
I said this over and over to people. I wouldn't wish my 20s on anyone because it was a compounding of a lot of factors, not only the erosion of fame, it was personal contacts that began to move away from me. Some of them because they knew I was old meat, and others because they were pursuing their own success. And it's different for a bubblegum star like I was, where there was always sort of a bit of, who are you kidding kind of attitude, if not outright resentment, than it is for young women. Because the people who employ you after the salad days are done are, in the main, mostly young men. And Shelley would comment about this all the time. She'd be brought in for parts because these then teenage boys had lusted after her and wanted to meet her.
Yeah.
That was not the case for me.
Yeah. You say Mickey Rooney encouraged you to go back to school. You did go back to school.
I did. In fact, I did. It took a while for me to get out of town. Thank goodness by that time I had a contract with Simon & Schuster for a book. And being back in New England put me smack in the middle of a culture that encouraged education and supported it. And I was able to do just that. I figured if I'm going to get paid to write books, I better find out what I'm doing at the collegiate level, and it worked out well.
Well, you wrote several books.
Well, yeah, 16 in all over the next few years. And I suppose that career, which was going well, would have been sustained if I hadn't come across all these former kid stars that were down on their luck and in trouble, and I just knew I had to do something about it.
Well, that was a good segue. Thanks. To my next question.
You're very welcome.
I saw you on a show a few years back with Patty Duke, Kim Fields, I think Melissa Gilbert was on it, and other former child actors. You were just all sitting around a table talking about your experiences.
That was a unique show. It was called Child Stars, Their Story, and it was produced and directed by Tony Dow and Melissa Gilbert from Little House on the Prairie. Mm-hmm. And when we get together, and by we, I mean former kid stars, no matter what your circumstance, current circumstance in life, when we're together, you are looking at classmates, people who have been there, been down this road, dealt with fame and stage parents and the fear that you have as a young person, just naturally, who am I? What will I become? And I think it was very clear to people how much we care about each other and understand the circumstances, particularly when Kim Fields started to cry, saying, why do I have to keep proving that I can do this?
Yeah.
And now, she had her difficulties. Well, we all did. But I'm a little more pugnacious than the rest, and I was the kind of guy on a audition who would look at the jerk across the desk and say, what the hell are you doing on that side of the desk? I meant it. They didn't, and to this day, don't understand the impact and power of the medium and how careful everyone should be when they are creating broadcast images. It's not that life is so rosy, but you have an impact. You can create images, point the way towards a better kind of life, and pose better solutions to real-life problems. And today you can see the net result of all of these bad decisions over the past 3 decades. You get reality shows.
Oh, yeah.
And, celebrating coarseness and vileness and ill-educated people, which it causes harm. Not to grown-ups who watch this stuff, but to the children who are exposed to it.
Yeah. I have very little use for reality TV. Well, going back to the child actors, now people don't seem really too surprised when they hear about Lindsay Lohan or a Dana Plato or a Bobby Driscoll, things that happen to them. Are these kids just not prepared for the real world?
No, you can't be prepared. You sacrifice so much when you're suddenly the person being observed rather than doing the observing. It's almost as if development is arrested when your fame peaks, and people do not permit you to sit back and watch and observe. They don't give you secrets. They don't allow you to have silences, and you're kind of cut off from ordinary development. And I wrote when Michael Jackson died, what did you expect of this person who had been working from the time he was 2 years old? 2 years old.
Yeah.
Who became the economic engine of an entire family. Yes, we loved the music. It was brilliant. But what was the cost? And that's what I tell people over and over. That's what our public education campaign was, starting back with Jay North, when we first went public, if you will, on Sally Jesse Raphael's show, to say, look, there's a cost to all of this.
Well, you are now what they call an activist.
Well, that is for sure. I wouldn't have guessed that this is where I'd be, but nonetheless, here I am.
Well, you founded a support group that you call A Minor Consideration.
That's correct. That was back in January of 1990.
Now, what exactly is the focus? I mean, what are you trying to do?
Well, initially, our focus was to provide, at no cost, emotional and financial help and guidance, and to serve as kind of like a therapy group where we could all get together and share our experiences and our concerns, and share too the various solutions that each of us has had to kind of craft out of whole cloth. But about 3 years into the process, when we were actually bringing people back to reality and sobriety, my wife, Ronna, posed this incredible question. She said, why are we doing all these interventions when we should be preventing the problems? And that started a whole other thrust with A Minor Consideration, where we began to look at the structure of the industry. And mind you, this was with the industry's input and support. So we found just astonishing things. For example, children in the entertainment business, this is nationwide, are exempt from federal child labor laws, which means if you work in a state like California, which has a very sophisticated and mature set of laws for kids in the business, that's one thing. But if you're in North Carolina, which has no laws, you're in trouble.
Wow.
Or if you're a kid on a reality show like the Goslin children, 8 of them, you're working in a state that didn't even admit that you were working. So we began to work on the structure as it surrounds children, and I think our crowning achievement so far, at least here in California, is that the child who does the work owns the money. Because before we came around, in every state in this union, children are actually chattel. They are owned by their parents. And the law that we had to change in California said the following: the parents of a working child are entitled to its custody, income, and services. For all the kid actors you have ever heard about pre the year 2000, actually, despite what you heard about money being set aside, and it was in some cases, the truth of the ownership of the money was that it belonged to the parents.
Yeah.
That's what happened back in the 30s with Jackie Coogan, for whom the Coogan Law is named, up through Gary Coleman, whose parents said in court, Your Honor, you cannot steal what already belongs to you.
Yeah.
And they were correct.
Gary Coleman's story was the one that came to mind. He talked about his parents just taking over his money, and he had nothing. Well,
that's the saddest part of all. So many of the people whose lives that we touch came to that sad day. In fact, we call it the day of reckoning, when you look up after years of work and discover that there's nothing for you. You see, most kids didn't have a Coogan account, even in my era. you only got a Coogan account if you had a long-term court-approved contract. So kids who had featured roles in movies and worked a lot as featured artists on television shows, when they went to work, Uncle Sam got his cut, and the state got their cut, and the agent got their cut, and nothing was set aside.
Yeah.
And that's what we changed. And the truth is, most people I have found over the years actually agree with me, with us, that the person who does the work should own the money.
Yeah. Well,
it is very wrenching when you talk to a 30-year-old former kid star who is being pursued by the IRS for the failures of his or her parents when they were minors.
Yeah.
I mean, how ludicrous. And, the federal government could get along without the money earned by young performers if it was properly saved.
Well, now, this effort here started out primarily to benefit former child actors, but I understand you've had some dealings with the Octomom, too.
Well, things grow. I was like most of this nation, absolutely shocked and frightened for the 14 children in Octomom's family. It wasn't just the octuplets, who were, of course, born prematurely and were seriously at risk. But the fact that the media had forgotten the vulnerability, so the fragility, if you will, of these children under her roof.
Mm-hmm.
And I waited for the Department of Social Services to intervene, for the Department of Labor here in California to intervene, for someone to step up to the plate. And finally, I looked over my shoulder. There was no one there, so I approached the Superior Court to say at least give these children an advocate, someone who can guard their potential income. And that was quite a process. We were successful, of course, and that's why you don't see a reality show with these 14 children.
Thank goodness.
Which could, and the long-term consequences are so manifestly apparent. And you don't have to listen to me. To think about the Dion quintuplets. They have written about this. Children are not exhibits in a zoo.
Yeah, yeah.
And unfortunately, we have more than 200 children on reality shows. For example, what drove the family of the Balloon Boy to think that a stunt like they attempted to pull off would give them a television show?
Stranger things have happened, I guess.
Hard to find something stranger than parents willing to sell out the welfare of their children.
Yeah.
For a 1 or 2 year stint on a reality show when the whole history of the entertainment business, and I'm going back to 1850, is largely negative.
I don't know. People will do anything to get on TV, I guess.
Well, yes, and as we recently saw with Jeff Conaway's death,
yes,
the truth is that participating on these kinds of shows and bringing all your dirty laundry to the surface has lethal consequences, because in Jeff's case, he really didn't have a sympathetic audience, because at the end of the day, what people said was, hey, how bad can it be? He's on television.
Yeah.
And that's... It is that bad. Excuse me. Whereas we, with a minor consideration, when we take someone under our wing, you'll never hear about it. It never gets in the press. We know how to be discreet and work on the person, not the celebrity. Yeah, we don't care if a person sustains an on-camera career in the entertainment business. What we're looking for is a well-balanced, well-adjusted, productive adult,
mm-hmm.
which ought to be the aim of every parent out there.
Yeah.
Believe me, you put your adulthood at risk when you expose children to circumstances over which you have no control.
Well, moving on from that, on a lighter note.
On a lighter, yes.
You're on the board of the Donna Reed Foundation, and from what I read, the Donna Reed Festival is coming up in a couple of weeks. All
nonprofits in this country have been undergoing an extreme economic compression. And we're also part of that on the Donna Reed Foundation, as is a minor consideration. But for more than 25 years, we have been gathering in Donna's hometown of Denison, Iowa, to help prepare young people for careers in the entertainment business. And it's been a wonderful quarter of a century.
I guess folks can go to your website and keep up with what's going on with you and your
Absolutely. You can just go to minorcon.org. That's minorcon, N as in Nora, .org.
Okay.
Or just Google Paul Petersen. Make sure you spell it with an S-E-N. It's the Danish spelling. And you'll find out what we're up to. We're really not only pleased with our progress over these years, but we're kind of amazed, too, because, believe me, the people who were in at the beginning, we had no idea where this path would lead us. For example, the exemption that I mentioned earlier about children in entertainment being exempt from federal child labor laws. Well, there's also millions of other children in America who are also exempt from federal child labor laws, particularly the children who labor in agriculture. And, that's just not right, especially for a country too prone to point fingers at other countries. We can fix what makes it so silly is we can fix this simply at a federal level, but there's been an absence of cooperation on a federal level, and it's been through 3 different administrations. It's almost as if people really believe that all of these problems have been fixed, and no matter how many headlines come into their lives about the reality of young performers who are growing up, they continue to believe this myth that the kids in the business are well protected, or that mom and dad won't expose their children to risk on the family farm. It's just not true.
Yeah, well, of course now, around these parts, a lot of kids grow up working on the farm. And
well, sure they do, but, they don't work in slaughterhouses. They don't. They are not supposed to be working with heavy equipment, and yet one teenager every week is killed on some farm somewhere in America. That's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, economic pressures can drive entire families into making unhealthy decisions.
Right.
And, I'm not against the kid working. I know its positive benefits. I experienced it. But, Lordy, you can't risk a child's health.
Right.
Working in the fields when they've just been sprayed with some, DuPont chemical might be dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thank you for taking your time out to visit with us today.
The pleasure is all mine. As you can tell, I get on my soapbox all the time.
Well, it's been in a positive direction, though. You've had positive results out of it. So
I think so, and I'm grateful for the experiences that I've had, both the good and the bad, because it's helped me develop the kind of credibility that's priceless. When I went to Pennsylvania and went to the Department of Labor and Industry, they knew I knew what I was talking about, and you can't buy that. On behalf of the 600 former kid stars who formed the core of a minor consideration, we're proud of the work we're doing.
Well, good luck with your efforts. And
thank you. Well, hey, we'll talk again, because no doubt there'll be issues that need some explanation.
Okay. Well, I'll be sure to give you a call.
Outstanding.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.